I will praise you even in the valleys. I will praise you even in the valleys. Let's be real. We don't like the valleys. We don't like the path. Let me tell you about a path that I hiked with Catherine, my lovely wife, about 5 years ago. We hiked a 14er. Do you know what a 14er is? A 14er is a mountain that's 14,000 feet high. They have about 50 of them, a little over 50 of them in the state of Colorado. So we went to the easiest of them called Bierstadt. And we woke up really early in the morning because our guide, our church member, a friend, Dan Turk, I call him a mountaineer. He lives in the mountains, literally. He said, you want to get there early enough because once it hits about 1 p.m., there's risk of thunderstorms and lightning. So we want to wake up early and get there early. So we woke up like 3 or 4 in the morning. We drove about an hour and a half. We finally got to the site. We started our hike around 5:30. And I was looking forward to this hike. I wanted to get to the mountaintop. Now, this is my first hike. And we were worried about altitude sickness. And they say that the way that you can counter altitude sickness is by bringing a lot of water. And so me, a rookie hiker, I didn't have a bladder. I actually packed plastic bottles of water. I probably had like 20 in my backpack. So I was unnecessarily carrying 25, 30 pounds on my back. We started to hike. We had to use lights because it was so dark. We started before dawn. And we just kept going and going and going. I was good for the first hour, second hour, and finally after we passed the valley, we started going up. We probably started at about 12,000 feet. We're probably at 12,600 right now. 10 minutes passed by, 15 minutes passed by. Let's take a break. Let's rest. We kept going up. It got a little bit steeper, probably around 13,000 feet. Let's take a rest. This is too much. Come on, we're going to make it, Catherine. 3.5 hours into the hike. Super tired. Catherine's feeling dizzy. We get up to about 13,500, almost at 14,000, and Catherine says, hold on. I think I'm feeling a little bit sick. And so she sat down, and she said, Nestor, I can't make it. I don't think I can make it. No, you can do it. I believe in you. I can't make it. Are you sure? Yes, I'm just going to stay here. Are you sure? Our first 14er, and you're not going to be there? I need to rest. Okay. And so I did the manly thing. I took my backpack off and left it with her. And I said a prayer for her. And I wanted to finish this hike. But how could I finish the hike without Catherine? And then we got to this place where there were boulders. And so no one told me about these boulders. So I was bouldering up and climbing over these rocks. And finally, I reached the mountaintop. I reached the summit. And man, was it ineffable, indescribable, beautiful scene. But how could I view this beautiful scene without my wife? It's not the same. So I hiked back down, and I saw my wife who was rested, and then we still had another 3 hours down the mountain. Have mercy. Then we finally got to the valley, and we're like, look, we're close to the car. Not really, we still have another hour. And I remember we were on this path. My feet had blisters. We were dizzy. We were complaining. I wasn't really praising, to be honest with you. I just wanted to get home. Catherine was dizzy. We finally made it to the car. Catherine got sick. We rested at home. It took us a few days to recover. Here's the truth, guys. The path to the mountaintop is not easy. And some of you are in a path that's hard. The path in your family is hard. The path in your marriage is hard. Someone's sick in the family. The path is hard. In our country, the path is hard. Do you know what happened yesterday? Supreme Court. Roe versus Wade, rejected. I'm not making any statements here, but what I do know is that it is causing an even greater division in a country that's already divided. The valley is hard, friends. And then we're coming off a pandemic, which we're still in. COVID's still going around. The path is hard. Kids dying, innocent children dying in different places around this nation. The path is hard. The path is hard. The path to the mountaintop is hard. And the path was hard for a man by the name of Joseph, which we're studying about. So let's go. Let's read about his path, Genesis chapter 39. Let's read about this path, Genesis chapter 39. We're going to be in 39, 40, 41. But you know how hard the path was. Pastor Rodney shared last Sabbath. Potiphar's wife came. Hey, lay with me, Joseph. No, I can't do that. And what was his reason? Why did he say no to seduction? It wasn't ethics alone that stopped him from saying no to the seductress. It wasn't, I need to be a good person. Because when you're in the fire, you're not leaning on, I need to be a good person. The reason why he said no was because he said, how could I offend and put a frown on the God whom I love? And so Joseph does the right thing. He says no, and he runs. And then notice what happens in Genesis 39, verse 17. She gets the cloak, she goes to her husband. This is Potiphar's wife. And then she says, that Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me. But as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house. Was that the truth? No. This Egyptian was making up a story. Oh, are you serious? Are you telling me the truth? Verse 19, when the master heard the story his wife told him, saying, this is how your slave treated me, he burned with anger. Verse 20, Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Joseph, he does the right thing, and what happens? Does he get rewarded? No, he gets punished. He does the right thing, and he gets punished. Typically, when you think of cause and effect, you do a good behavior, and there's a good reward or result. But in many instances, especially with the followers of God, you do the right thing, and you end up with a bad result. Because non-God followers can't understand the principles of God followers. It doesn't make sense. So they make up stories. And could it be that before Joseph reaches the mountaintop, before he becomes this great leader, which we'll find out later, before he reaches the mountaintop, that God is giving him, that he has to cross the valley? Could it be that Joseph has to cross the valley? Could it be that in that valley, he does the right thing and he still gets in trouble? Could it be that many of us, encouraged to do the right thing, we say, Lord, I love your laws, I love you. I love, hey, your Genesis chapter 20, verses 8 through 11. I'm sensing that I should honor your Sabbath day, seventh-day Sabbath, and enjoy a date with you and worship and bless others on that day. And then you start living in line with these principles, and then people are like, what are you doing? Come on. It's just a normal. No, it's not for me. Or you decide, you know what? I'm going to stay pure. And I'm going to wait till marriage. I'm going to stay pure. I'm not going to let my mind or my eyes behold anything that will compromise my faith and hurt my relationship with my God. And you do that, and then this culture screams at you, you prude. You old-fashioned, parochial, old-school saint. We do the right thing, and then we get in trouble. For Joseph, the valley's not easy, but for some reason, God has appointed a valley for him. And for some reason, God has appointed a valley for you and for me. So Joseph's in the prison. Are you serious? Like, I'm chained up here and I'm sitting in prison because I did what was right. God, I did the right thing. Why am I here? Why am I in prison? God, please, why am I in prison? And while Joseph is sitting there questioning, why am I here? Notice what the text says. Finish off verse 20. But while Joseph was there in prison, verse 21, the Lord was with him. He showed him favor. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. 22, so the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. 23, the warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Hallelujah. So why was Joseph appointed a valley? Why was Joseph in prison? Why was he in this valley? Could it be that one of the reasons he went into this valley is to be reminded that God was with him? You know, I heard a message just recently. Last night, actually, I was watching a sermon. And this speaker said something profound. And I said, this is exactly what I believe. He said that a lot of times when we unjustly suffer for something we don't even deserve, we look at God and say, God, I need a reason. But if you look at all the characters of the Bible, God does not give his people a reason. He gives them a revelation. Let me repeat that in case you didn't catch what I said. A lot of times we suffer. God in heaven, why was I born into a family like this? Or why am I struggling like this? Or I've been doing the right thing and yet I'm struggling. I thought you were a good God. Why? God says, I'm not here to give you a reason. I'm here to give you a revelation of myself. And so Joseph is in prison. Why? I'm not here to give you a reason. I'm here to show up and give you a revelation of myself. God is with him. So could it be that he's in the valley to be reminded that God is with him? And could it be that he was also there to help those who were in the valley as well? God elevated him to second in command in the prison so that he could care for those who were in the prison as well. And could it be that God has placed you, my friend, and me in a valley so that we can help be people who are in the valley? Could it be? Could it be that I experienced the heartbreak loss of a parent, of my father dying on New Year's Eve this past year? Could it be that experience helps me understand and serve and minister to those who have also lost a parent? Could it be? Could it be? So he's in prison now. Oh, this story, it's a powerful, moving story. Now we're in chapter 40, verse 1. Let's keep going. Sometime later, the cupbearer. Who? Cupbearer and the baker. Two characters. You got Joseph, now you got the cupbearer, the baker. These people, they offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with two officials, the chief cupbearer, the chief baker. He's upset. They did something wrong. And so they put him in the same prison as Joseph. Joseph was watching over them. And after they had been in custody for some time, verse 5, now each of the two men, the cupbearer, the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. They're like, what in the world is this dream about? I had this dream. Yeah, what did you dream about? Oh, I had this dream. How are we going to figure out this dream? It doesn't make any sense. How do we understand this? What is this dream about? Chapter 40, verse 6, now when Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials, why do you look so sad? Now check this out, verse 8. We both had dreams, they answered, but there is no one to interpret them. And notice what Joseph says. I love this line. He says, do not interpretations belong to God? Like, I can't figure it out. But even though I'm in this prison, and even though I've suffered unjustly, I still believe that there is a God who understands the future and understands my future. And this same God understands your future. And so dreamer number one, cupbearer, verse 9. Check this out, number 1. The chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, in my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand. What in the world is this? Joseph, can you tell me this dream? I don't know. I'm confused, I'm lost, I'm perplexed. Can you please give me an answer? Please tell me. Please tell me. Then Joseph says, verse 12, this is what it means. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to when you were the cupbearer. That's what's going to happen. Are you serious? That's what's going to happen. You're going to be placed back in the same position. Are you serious? Yes. Are you serious? Yes. Hey. And cupbearer, hey, can you do me a favor? What's the favor, Joseph? What's the favor? Verse 14, but when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I'm tired and I don't like this valley. Verse 15, I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. Do you see what he's calling the prison? He's calling it a dungeon. And that word for prison is the same Hebrew word for cistern, where his brothers threw him into. So he was unjustly thrown into a dungeon by his brothers, and he is unjustly incarcerated now in this prison or this dungeon. And he's saying, look, when you go back to the king, mention my name, and maybe because I did a good favor, my name can be exonerated, and I can get out of here. I can get out of prison. I'm tired of this dungeon. Why? Because the valley is hard. The valley that you're struggling with, that I'm struggling with, is hard. Debilitating the disease, it's hard. Relationship problems, it's hard. Having faith in a secular culture, it's hard. It's hard. Please do me a favor. All right, Joseph. Yeah, sure. Then the baker comes on the scene. It gets worse. Verse 16, when the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, I too had a dream. On my head there were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Come on, can you give me a good interpretation? Please, pretty please. Give me a good interpretation. Verse 18, this is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh. Are you serious? Verse 20, now the 3rd day, it was Pharaoh's birthday, big party. He gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. Here you go. You can have your position back. But then he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. Wow. So Joseph finds out the news. Just like God said, now's my chance. Now's my chance to get out of this dungeon. Come on, cupbearer, please. God, please move that cupbearer to tell Pharaoh that I'm a good guy. Please. And the last verse of chapter 42 says this, the chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. He's serious. He's waiting. He's twiddling his thumbs. 1 day passes by. Nope. 2 days. 1 week. 1 month. 2 months. Nope. How long is he going to wait? How long is Joseph going to wait in the dungeon? The text says in chapter 41, verse 1, when 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. 2 years. He's waiting in the valley. God in heaven, please help me. I know you're with me. Please help me. Please help me. Please help me. The valley is hard, friends. I know the valley is hard, but could it be that God had Joseph in the valley for 2 years, which felt like an eternity, to refine his character? Could it be that God was trying to teach good old Joseph patience? Racism is a horrible thing in this country. It's horrible everywhere. It was even worse in South Africa, because there it was overt and it was legalized. They would say the whites live here, the blacks live here, and the coloreds live in this territory. Nelson Mandela didn't like that. I don't like this. I'm going to stand for the oppressed. I'm going to stand for principle. I'm going to stand for what is right. He did what was right, just like Joseph, and what happened? He was unjustly incarcerated. Do you know how long? Not 2 years, not 10 years, not 20 years. 27 years Nelson Mandela was incarcerated. You know, he missed out on growing old hair with his wife. He missed out on eating meals and hearing the kids laugh and ask him the questions of the day and the most perplexing questions. He missed out on seeing his kids go to school and getting married and having grandkids. He missed all of this. Why the valley, Lord? Why the valley? Why the valley? Could it be that God gives me the valley to refine my character? I can testify as a father with children. I love my children. But could it be that God gives me the valley to test me and to refine me? And in those moments where I raise my voice and I lose it, I lose my temper. Oh, come on. Pastors don't ever lose their temper. Guys, do you see me hovering over the ground? Like I'm on this platform, but I'm with you. We are all in this same journey of God refining us, and it's those moments that God says, hey, Nestor, don't try to protect yourself and show that you're the best. Get on your knees, humble yourself. And in those moments when I come to my kids and I say, you know what? Daddy was wrong. I try to get my way by raising my voice, and that wasn't right. Could it be that God gives me the valleys to refine me and give me patience and to refine my character? The valley is hard, but God uses it to refine us. It's the last character, last dreamer. Chapter 41, verse 1. 2 years had passed. Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile. When out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. He really had 2 dreams. He's perplexed. What in the world does this mean? I have no idea what is going on. The chief cupbearer said, hey, you don't know the dream, but there was a guy when I was in prison who told me what my dream was about. You can go to Joseph, and Joseph can help interpret that dream. Okay. So Joseph gets up, he shaves, he comes before the king. Verse 14, so Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He quickly brought him. He shaved, changed his clothes. Verse 15, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream. No one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. All right. So please, let me tell you my dream. He told him the dream. And Joseph says, I can't do it. God will give Pharaoh the answer that he desires. Verse 28, chapter 41, it is just as I said to Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt. 7 years. But 7 years after that, a famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered because the famine that follows it will be so severe. And then look what he says in verse 32. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. Could it be that we serve a God who is just doesn't do things by happenstance, but he does things with purpose, that he's still in control and still sovereign? Lord, another valley. I'm already in prison. And then we're going to have 7 years of abundance, and then 7 years of famine, another valley. Lord, what are you doing? What are you thinking? But Joseph goes on. What you need, Pharaoh, what you need is someone who can help, who will help lead this country and lead the world in this famine. 37. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and all his officials. 38. So Pharaoh asked them, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the spirit of who? He's saying that the Spirit of God is in him. Could it be that God has Joseph in the valley, that he has you and me in our valley to refine our character, so that when outsiders, non-God followers look at us, they see, hey, I see the Spirit of God in that person. I see the Spirit of God in that person. Could it be? Could it be? 39. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne, I will be greater than you. Now he reached the mountaintop. But friends, before he reached the mountaintop, he had to go through the valley. Before he reached the mountaintop, he had to go to the valley. There are no shortcuts. We have to go through the valley to reach the mountaintop, because in the valley it's where we find God. In the valley it's where we are refined. It's in the valley that we rely on God. And could it be, just a side note here, I was thinking about this, could it be that God has some of you in places outside of this community of faith? When I say community of faith, this area has churches, we have a school, we have schools, and we have 4 hospitals. But what about the Josephs? So those of you who are serving in capacities outside of the faith community, could it be that God is raising up a generation of people, even outside of the established systems that we know, to bring a blessing and to bring relief to those who are in famine? Could it be that God has placed you in that position of leadership and authority and of service so that you can be a blessing to this city and a blessing then to this state and the nation? Could it be that Joseph was placed in a position not only to disciple others and show the purposes of God, but just to bless the community and to bless the city and to make it a place that prospers and flourishes? Could it be? So Joseph, he doesn't cut any corners. Look what the text says in verse 46. He was 30 years old. How old? 30 years old. Oh, they're too young for leadership. Are you serious? 30 years old. Too young for leadership? 30 years old. And yet I say we because I'm 40 this December. So I can say we now, We say, no, we cannot pass the torch on to the younger generation, because you know what? They're going to take it and just do some crazy things that I'm not comfortable with. I'm not used to. So then what happens? Then the 30-year-olds, they can't be equipped and empowered in God's community of faith, so they have to go outside the community to be elevated in positions. Because the non-believing organizations actually see promise in the young adults. I'm pointing the finger, when I am so critical and can't trust these young adults, these really adults, to lead. 30 years old. When he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years. He stored them in cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding. In verse 49, Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because he was beyond measure. God was with him. God blessed him. God made him abundant. He blessed him. And I will say this, there are no shortcuts. You can't get to the mountaintop like Joseph if you don't go through the valley. Like, if I can't be faithful in the small things here in the valley, how can God trust me to be faithful in the greater things when I get to the mountaintop? I mean, that doesn't work. And even though Joseph was raising his fist and said, God, don't make sense of this. I'm going to believe that you're refining my character. And every position that he had, even when he was in prison, God used him and he stayed faithful and God blessed him. And could it be the faithfulness in the little things gave him the ability to be faithful in much? All right, so we're going to land the plane here. What's the main purpose of the valley? Because it hurts. Some of us are in the valley right now. I'm in the valley. You watching online, we're in the valley. We're in the valley. What's the main purpose of it? Last 2 verses, then we're done. Last 2 verses of chapter 41, starting with verse 56. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses. He sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. Wow, and then look at this last verse. And all the world, in the Hebrew, that's all the inhabitants of every country around the then known world, came to where? To Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. When there's a famine, people run to Joseph. When there's a famine, people run to Joseph. But you know what? This series is called Seeing Jesus in Joseph. The story of Joseph is not just to learn good principles of good conduct, and that's good. The story of Joseph is really about Jesus. Pastor, what are you talking about? I'll say it like this. When there's a famine, people come to Joseph. When there's a famine in people today, and by the way, friends, we are in a famine. It might not be a physical famine, but there's a famine in this world. There's division. There's a famine in your home. There's a famine in our homes, in my life. When there's a famine, people came to Joseph. When there's a famine now, people come to Jesus. How do I know this? So you take this mini story, okay? This mini story of Joseph, which we elevate to the top. Above this mini story is this second tier. Who was the author of the book of Genesis? And Exodus and Leviticus and Numbers and Deuteronomy? Moses. When did he write Genesis? He wrote Genesis to the Hebrews, the Jews that just came out of Egypt, who were spending 40 years in the wilderness. I mean, you talk about complaining, Lord, 40 years, I could have been back home and eat garlic and rest in a nice chair and under a tent. We're traveling for 40 years. It's hot out here. And could it be that Moses wrote this to give an encouragement to the Jews traveling for 40 years, saying, don't you worry. The same promise that my God gave to my great-grandfather Abraham is going to come to pass. We're going to be a great nation that will bless nations. Don't worry. We will finally make it to the promised land. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. We're in this valley for 40 years, but we're going to make it. We're going to make it to the promised land. But let me tell you something, friends. Reaching the promised land is not God's goal. Reaching the promised land is not God's goal. His goal is not the promised land, L-A-N-D. His goal is the promised L-A-M-B, the land. That's his goal. So you have this small story of Joseph. You have this second-tiered story of the Jews traveling to Jerusalem, to the promised land, which later became Israel, right? And then the city was Jerusalem. But what is the larger story? We'll call it the meta story. That God created this perfect place. He had creation, Adam and Eve. But then what did they do? It starts with an S. They sinned. And how was God going to fix that broken relationship? The only way that he could fix that broken relationship was not by them bringing sacrifices and groveling at, foaming at the mouth and saying, God, approve of me. No. He said, man cannot fix the relationship, so I'm going to fix that relationship for them by sending my son, Jesus Christ, the promised lamb. That's called restoration. So you have creation, you have sin, and then over here you have new creation, but between sin and new creation, what do we have? We have restoration. Restoration of what? A restored relationship with God only through the Messiah, the promised Lamb of God. That is the purpose of the story of Joseph. Not to point us to the promised land, and many of us, our goal is to get to heaven. Yes, that's not the goal, guys. The goal of our meta story, our life, is not to get to heaven so we can enjoy mangoes and, God forbid, durians for the rest of our life. I know, I'm sorry, I just offended my two brothers here. The purpose of going to heaven is to spend time and enjoy eternal relationship with the promised L-A-M-B, the Lamb. And that is the story that defines all other stories. And so, no. I'm not just going to talk about Joseph in light of good conduct and good principles and good ethics. That's good. But the grander story is the promised Lamb. That's the promised Lamb. And last story, I'm done, I promise. Joseph's dad, what was his dad's name? Remember? Jacob? He had a feud with his brother. He ran from Esau. And when he was running away from Esau, he had a dream. And in that dream, it says in Genesis 28 that he saw a stairway. He had a dream of a stairway by which all the angels were ascending and descending between heaven and earth. He saw a stairway. Some versions say ladder, but in the Hebrew, it's actually stairway. So I like the NIV. Thank you. It's a stairway. And then Jesus, the Lamb of God, chapter 1. When Nathan is skeptical that this is supposed to be the Messiah. Nathan starts to figure out, yeah, this is the Messiah. You know what Jesus says? He says, you will see the angels descending and ascending upon the Son of God. He was saying, I am the stairway. I am the stairway. And so some of us are in a valley right now, but the real heart, the real struggle that we're in is in a broken relationship with the Father. And it was this promised Lamb who said the only way that we're going to connect with mankind again is by creating a stairway, and that's me. And I'm going to go to the valley, and in that valley, he could have given up. But he said, my God, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, I will follow your will. It was Jesus, when he was on the cross, he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? He felt the eternal pain of the valley. And when he died, the valley did not keep him. The tomb was empty. Our Savior who left the mountaintop came to the valley, and he died in the valley. But he did not stay in the valley. He came out of the valley. He was resurrected, went back to the mountaintop. And he says, God, Father, now I'm going to give a way for my disconnected people by creating a staircase. And the way that the stairway is me. I will die for their sin. And so many of us think, all right, so that means that I have to climb up the stairway and climb, even if it's hard, and just foam at the mouth and grovel and try to get God's attention so that he can accept me. When we miss that the text in both Genesis and John say that angels were descending and ascending, which means that the stairway is not something that so much that we climb, but it's more like an escalator. You ever been to an escalator before? That escalator is going to move whether or not you're on it. The angels of God are ascending and descending. The Spirit of God, the Father, Jesus, is constantly moving to help us up. So it's not so much how hard can I climb. The question is, am I willing to get on and allow him to take me to heaven? Take me to the mountaintop. It's not so much what you do, but it's what he does for you and in you and through you. So friend, we're in a valley. We shake our fist and say, God, why? But he says, I might not give you a good reason, but I'm going to give you a revelation. I'm going to give you myself. And even though your valley is tough, I'm going to come to earth and die in an apparently insurmountable valley so that you can be in the mountaintop. And it's by getting on that escalator and receiving and believing in the Son of God and not looking at what I do or what I don't do, but what he does for me, that by beholding I become changed. And then I realize that God is with me in the valley and that he'll bring me to the mountaintop in his time. So is there someone here who's in the valley? Get on the escalator. Get on the escalator, friend. Our praise team is going to come up. We're going to sing. But from a pastor's heart, a friend's heart, would you ride the escalator? My sister might be watching. I remember when she was a kid, she was terrified of the escalator. Anyone terrified of the escalators when you were a kid? She was terrified. It moves too fast. But you know, the escalator of Jesus, you don't have to be scared about his escalator. He moves at the right pace for you. And so, last week we had baptisms. If there's someone who's been in the valley and you're like, I want God with me in the valley. And I want to depend on this God who died in the valley to take me to the mountaintop. Why wait? Speak to me. Come forward. I'm here. Speak to me, Pastor Rodney. Speak to the elders. We want to journey with you to begin that journey in baptism. If you've never received Christ and never surrendered to this escalator that's constantly moving for you, then friend, why not surrender to the one who surrendered for you in the valley? How could I not respond to a God who's given so much for me and continues to give? So today, look to him. Look to him. Praise team, lead us. Stand with us as we sing this closing song.